Hi, it's Todd here, and as most of you are aware, I am fascinated by medieval fire arrows. So when I started thinking about the huge fire darts that were found on the wreck of the Mary Rose, I had to find out more, and there's only one place to go. So I contacted the Mary Rose Trust, talked to Dr Alex Hildred, one of the original dive archaeologists. She invited me down to show me around the museum and all of the little parts and pieces they've got of these fire darts, to tell me everything that she knew. So what's really intriguing about these darts is we don't quite know how they were used. Were they thrown from the fighting tops, the crow's nests? Were they shot out of a cannon? And it's this mystery and their sheer scale that has got me really excited. How were they used? What did they do? So join me in the museum now and we'll have a look at everything that I can gather up there, and then we're going to make another film where I actually make them and use them. Clearly this is a non-functional dummy, but I've come down to the Mary Rose Trust to learn all about them and how I can make them. I've worked with medieval fire arrows before. I'm continually amazed by how sophisticated they are. But this thing is massive. It's on a different scale. And the original artefacts are stored here at the Mary Rose Museum. The only way that we can work out how they were constructed, how they were made, and possibly how they were used. But incendiary weapons are not just Hollywood myth. They were absolutely used all through the medieval and the Renaissance period. And so this book here, Book of the Firework, written about 1400, it even had a colour coding system for the different kinds of fire arrows that you could use. And this was all over Europe, this book. So we have fire pots, fire arrows, stink pots, lances, garlands, and fire darts, some of which were found on the Mary Rose, and the fire dart is why I'm here. So now you have a little background information. We're going to meet Dr Alex Hildred. She's one of the marine archaeologists that worked on the ship before it was raised to the surface in 1982. She's now the head of research at the Mary Rose Museum.
Hello.
Alex.
Hi, nice to meet you.
You too, absolute pleasure. So thank you, and thank the Mary Rose Museum first of all for entertaining me. We are here in front of the crow's nest, the fighting top, and the dart.
Well, we found the fighting top on the lower deck. It was in store in kit form, which is why we've got it, because obviously we have nothing left of the masts, and the crow's nests or fighting tops would have gone. And we wondered, because the list is darts for tops, so we combined the two. Do they fit together? Will this work from a fighting top? It's rather large. How many people can you put in there with a dart this big?
Yeah.
Probably not more than one. How many darts would you have? Is it a one-shot chance?
There are a lot of questions. I mean, there is that fantastic picture from the Ashmolean Museum.
Absolutely.
Which has a dart that kind of size balanced across a crow's nest.
Which is why we
But not an incendiary dart.
No, I know.
I mean, can you imagine being up the top of that swaying mast trying to light an incendiary charge?
No.
Everything about that just horrifies me. So we're now in the reserve collection at the Mary Rose Museum, and I've come here with Alex to, well, partly to talk about Weapons of Warre and what's in that, which is a fantastic book that covers the armaments of the Mary Rose, incendiary weapons amongst it, and you literally wrote the book.
With a lot of other people, but yes, I knitted it together.
So this section here on the incendiary weapons, you're very familiar with it.
Right, well, first of all, I think it's identifying the fact that we had one, and we were working on the main deck in the stern excavating and found this paddle-shaped object that we literally, in the finds book, it says it's a paddle. And then we found that there were another two of the paddly bits, but this paddle had a slightly longer thing. It was obviously on a stick. We then noticed that there were all sorts of bits of the same shape, size, and type of wood that were coming up in the same area. I managed to build this long pole with a flight or a paddle on the end of it that seemed to have a rim at the top with nail holes in it, and then a square hole for obviously an iron spike, because the iron, it was discolored and the iron had gone. Just behind that was a whole gloop. It just came up as a ball of muck basically, but you could see through that and you could feel that it felt a bit tarry, and that it had bits of wood sticking up and material sticking out of it. We put the bits together and then had a look at what was in that. The only thing we could come up with was the fact that it might be an incendiary dart or a big incendiary arrow, and there are historical references to those. And did we have one? So when we had it looked at, our archaeological illustrator, and the illustrators spend longer with almost anything than anybody else, because they have to draw, and they look and they understand, and they want to get it right, and they feel the need to understand it in order to put it to paper in the correct way for others to interpret. So they have the luxury of spending hours with it. And Nick Evans, who drew this one, came up absolutely trumps with his method of thinking. It's a sack on a bag with a load of tar on it. Why have, and a pegs, it's got to be something that's incendiary. Why have anything else? And so we then spent time wondering whether it was whether it was to be thrown, because you hear of incendiary darts, you hear of incendiary arrows, you hear fire arrows, balls of fire, all sorts of things. Could we put a name on it? And that's still a bit of a tricky one. Looking at that picture, which is from Biringiucchio's work Pyrotechnica, written in 1540 in
Which
Venice.
is a fantastic how-to manual on everything fire-related, including fire weapons. If you're interested in this stuff, go by Biringiucchio, it's brilliant.
Looking at the illustration, you've got all sorts of things that have wildfire within them. Pots of fire that are used in a sling. You've got these long incendiary things that look like incendiary sacks on top of a long arrow with a very funny shaped fin. And as we looked at the earlier 1514 inventory for the king's ships, which had something called hooks for arrows of wildfire. So
Which
whether those
we didn't
understand, but actually now looking together at this, is this a hook for an incendiary dart or an arrow of wildfire?
So I think these drawings that Nick Evans did, absolutely brilliant on the construction. So I followed them and I made a dummy dart here. You've got a canvas bag under here, so it's nailed off, filled with the compound, crisscrossed, but then the compound itself is quite hard to ignite. And you need a capping charge, an easy charge, like gunpowder, that's easy to ignite, that then will light the incendiary charge. Hard to light, but when it's alight, it doesn't want to go out. Now, I'm just going to pop that down. But if we have a look at this arrow here, which of course is a much more portable version of the same sort of thing. This one's done in rosin, and it lets you see the crisscrossing of the cord underneath. But it'll be the same with this and the same with that, that when it strikes a target, like it strikes a wall or whatever it is, the burn starts at the front. But this cord, rosin, canvas jacket effectively directs the burn forward. It pushes the burn in a forward way rather than coming out at the side. And so it puts the burn directly against the surface that you're trying to ignite.
So you've got much more chance.
The heat energy that's generated by this goes forward against your target, doesn't go out. And I think that that's probably the same. So I think that that's what the crisscrossing is about, is to create that sort of pressure vessel to direct the fire forward.
So this is part of the sack, if you like, so the thing's directly beneath this. It's made up of a cord going over it. And we had two of these wooden pegs towards the head, much like I can see there. There's one, and there's one that's still embedded here within, you can just see it, within the material that's left over. And I think it's picked up some of the charge, if you like, as well, and it's stuck to it for some reason, because it's the same color as some of the internal contents forming the charge.
It's almost become one material. So the fuse peg, it's not a fuse at all.
No, it's the peg.
It's just creating cavity. So I'll pull this one out and I'll show the viewers. Basically, it's a little wooden peg that goes into the capping charge, into the easy to light charge at the top. And now it's completely covered by, in this case, rosin, but in that case, pitch. So it's keeping a waterproof cover over everything. And just before you want to use it, you can just pull it away and that will come out. So now it's 2 minutes before you're going to use it. You don't have to worry about moisture anymore. You now poke your fuse into that hole. That's the fuse that you light, and then cast it. But what I find quite interesting about this, they seem to have one peg. These seem to have two pegs. But if the capping charge is powder, it's going to burn from here to here very fast. I think what it is, I've certainly had ones where I put the fuse in, lit it, and I've had a hang fire, it just doesn't go. And I think that that's like a emergency thing, that you have, either you have it as a second fuse, if the first one fails, you light the second, or you just light two fuses at once and just reduce the chance of a misfire.
How much smelting happens? I don't know.
On the outside?
Yeah.
When burning? Oh, well, it just gets consumed.
Consumed, absolutely.
But, well, on something like that, I'll have to find out. But that will burn for about a minute, something like that.
Is that all? Gosh.
But continuously and hot. But this is also interesting. It's covered in pitch. I've done rosin before. You can tell from where I handled it, but even earlier on, you just get a crazing, and bigger packets that I've done, incendiary charges of trebuchets, the rosin crazes, and that allows, tiny, but it allows a gap for moisture. Pitch doesn't do that.
So at sea, that's far more sensible.
At sea, it's far more sensible, and for bigger things, it's more sensible, and for long term, it's more sensible. It's also a phenomenal fuel. Do we have an exact composition for what's going on inside?
Not really. It's an enriched gunpowder, so basic gunpowder.
We've got sulphur,
You've got sulphur, you've got calcium.
We know it's got pitch in it, or carbon. We know it's got sulphur, we know it's got potassium nitrate.
The idea was you've got the basis of gunpowder, and whatever was used within the recipe at the time might be there, but we haven't been able to find it.
Yeah, but the last thing I'd like to know your opinion on is, if we come back to the sketch, the pitch jacket on the outside. So when Nick drew this, was there enough factual information to know the thickness of that, or has he just put a jacket on in a way that feels good?
No, Nick was a very meticulous illustrator. I can't ask him, I don't know where he lives at the moment, he left a while ago, but I don't think he would have given it a uniform thickness if he didn't firmly believe that that was the thickness of the outside.
That's an awful lot of pitch on the outside. That's maybe 20 millimetres. And it does burn, and it is a fuel, but if you're going to the effort of projecting something really nasty and burny, you make it really nasty and burny, not quite
cover
burny.
It. Yeah. How thick is the jacket that you're using?
I don't know, probably 3 millimetres something, 3 or 4 mil. My natural gut reaction is to try and pack as much oomph into it as possible with a thinner jacket. And then it comes down to how long it is. And this also comes down to how it was used. If it's hand thrown and it comes from the tops, you're never going to drive that amount of steel into a wooden plank. It's not going to happen. You're going to drive a spike that deep, maybe. So that says to me that any spike that's longer than hand's width is just not doing much.
Anti-boarding netting is about that size. If you had a less long one, it would go through and it might work its way through. The fact it's going the way through all the way that will come to there and catch it.
You know, maybe you're right. It will tangle better if it's longer, it will hold. The other thing is, the longer the head, if it is shot out of a gun, and I kind of struggle with that, but if it is shot out of a gun, the longer the head, the more likely it is to buckle on impact and so on. So a shorter head might be useful in that instance.
But it's conjecture. I mean, the length of our head was made almost for looking at the aesthetic qualities of the arrow itself and its position in the fighting top.
To go on.
When we have nothing but the hole.
Yeah, we don't know about that. We don't know if it's barbed. We don't know if it is a straight spike. I suspect it would be barbed, like your one up in the gallery, simply because it just goes in, it stays where it's put. And then the last bit is the structure. Really, so the shaft was silver fir, I think it was. So essentially a fairly lightweight pine. So we have flights, which I think from the book were oak or beech.
Yep, that's right. We've got 3 different ones, so they're different.
Yeah, I think that's all quite straightforward, that it's an oak or a beech shingle that's split out and put in. Nails and nails, some had 4, some had 2. So
we've got 2 spare ones if you want to look at.
I would love to look at. So we've got a layout picture here of the dart which is up in the museum itself. So the first one we looked at. And this is really interesting, actually, because I just saw the plan versions in the book. But you can see here that it tapers out, and that's just not a functional thing, it's just a manufacturing thing, that they've just put a single saw cut in and then just effectively put it wedged.
Yeah, also a bit of the substance on the top, the pitch.
Yeah,
a little bit of pitch, and it's very localised, and as though you're using it as a glue, but maybe it's just, that would be an area that's specifically on a ship. If it's hanging around in the damp, you might want to use it as a bit of a waterproofing.
What's really sweet, I noticed from the book, and I don't know why they bother doing this is a one-time use object, and it's not really ergonomic. But yet they've really gently just curved and sloped the back end there for, I don't know, craftsmanship reasons? I don't know. Maybe it's 3 years of sailors dragging it across a deck.
Yeah,
sanded it off.
Don't know.
So that is fantastically useful. Yeah, so this is the head area. I mean, that's quite interesting. They've just carved down there, I suppose, to create a little ledge for the cordage to...
Yeah, to be tight against. And those are just close-ups of the fuse pegs.
And so this is the outer covering with from the original cordage.
So that's what we were looking at. As I pointed out, you could sort of see the material.
But that, you see, also that's useful because that's telling me it's using a cordage which is about 3 millimetres, something like that.
And here you can see the lines of it. So.
Yeah, but you see, if you're looking back on this,
you can, and you can see it definitely on the anagram.
Yeah. So there's fantastically detailed drawings here about all the shaft and everything else in the flights, so we can replicate the functionality of that. And then we come to the compound. Now we know it's got sulphur.
Yep.
We know it's got potassium nitrate. It has a fuel, so it's pitch, charcoal, whatever. I hear you've got some that we can actually look at.
We've got some of the contents, yes, there are samples. We've got 2 others.
Were there different compounds involved? Like part of it was one thing, part of it was another?
No, it was just a lump that was dried out and then separated. So we have got some contents of the inside. We've looked at the linens, the sack, the remains of the sack. This is one of the bags, so it's powdery and granular. I think smell is often a good indicator. Indian
that smells
spices.
really good. That smells really tasty.
It does, doesn't it?
That's weird.
Yes, you can see
Yeah.
it's broken into...
I think I can't tell anything from that because, 500 years of degradation. I know they didn't put garam masala in it, I assume.
Smells like it though, doesn't it?
It does.
And then we have one more.
So it's hard to know whether it was ever granular or it was solid lump in the first place, I think.
So that's, again, the last contents of it. But they are, they're different enough to be different. The textures are a bit different.
To me, that looks like it was compressed as one solid lump and it's just broken down. I don't think that's
Well, you
gone
can
in.
see that from the bigger lumps. And can smell anything specific in that.
No, same again. Tasty. That is
Cooking
about
with
the
the
last,
Mary Rose.
about the last thing I ever thought that would smell of. So I have a plan, and that plan is that I'm going to go and make some.
Great.
I'll concoct some tests, so we work out what we're going to do. So the thing about incendiary weapons like this is they create fire. That's really obvious. And on a ship, you can't have fire. Not where you don't want it to be. And it diverts attacker, defender, gun operator, navigator, whatever. They have to stop the thing they're supposed to be doing to deal with the fire because you can't ignore it. But I also think that these are all about area denial as well. They're creating an atmosphere, a smoky area that you do not and cannot work in. And that is an aspect that I really want to test and I really want to think about in the context of the Mary Rose. Looking at deck heights, looking at the hatches where people are going to be moving.
Because there are not many access routes, and we actually found, in many cases, the human remains close to where the routes of access were because they were trying to get out. So I think that's a really important thing to test.
To get a better understanding of that, I think I need to go and look at the ship.
I think you do, so I think we should.
Brilliant. And you can take me up in the bucket?
Yes.
You promised?
Yes, I can.
Woohoo. So we're standing here at the stern now, and the rudder's on the floor, but I'm seeing quite a lot of ship above me. I mean, how high did it go?
Well, it went further than the roof of this building.
Goodness. And that's not the mast, that's just the body of the ship.
No, that's just the body of the ship. 5 decks and then the hold of the ship itself. We've got remains of 4 decks, and that would be a storage deck, and then above that the main gun deck, then the upper gun deck, across which in the middle we had this anti-boarding netting, which is why there's so much of a loss of life, if you like. And then one castle deck that we've got some remains of, and a second one that we know from historical sources.
I wonder why it was unstable.
Well, I don't think it necessarily was until it got water in through the open gun ports.
Was that just bad sailing?
I
Because
think
I've
it's a
heard that it was a
combination.
lot of, they'd overloaded it with guns too high up.
Well, there's no evidence for that either within the suite of guns that we picked up in the places we picked them up, or indeed within the inventory. And there's an inventory for all 58 of the vessels of Henry VIII. And so the Mary Rose's gun suite, she's the second largest ship within the fleet, is no different from anybody else's. And we think she'd fired and was turning to fire from the guns on the other side of the ship because she was actually facing back in the harbour, whereas the attack was facing outwards.
Yeah.
And so that only makes sense. And one eyewitness account says that guns were fired. She was turning to fire guns on the other side and sank on the side of the gun she just fired. And we found the lids open. So once the water gets in, shingle ballast being pushed over.
Well, I think it would be fantastic, Alex, if we could go down, go up and have a look down and
Get an idea of space when you're up there and looking at the
scale,
structure.
and also, frankly, just because I'd really like to. So, Alex, where was the dart found?
The dart was found. We're looking down on the main gun deck here.
Yeah.
So we're just inside the stern castle where there would have been 2 decks above us. Near there was a big bronze demi-culverin, and they were found beside it. The gun had gone upwards as the ship's heel to starboard. Amongst the jumble, we found the ends of the darts.
Yeah. So my assumption has always been with those darts is that they're for throwing from the tops.
Yeah, I mean, and Mary Rose has been listed with top darts.
Yeah.
The size of them would suggest that you'd get very few within the
Yep,
tops. Now,
I would
that
agree
doesn't
with
mean that they were shot from the gun. I'm just saying it's interesting they were found by a gun,
it's very
and the flights
interesting they're
actually
found by the gun.
fit into
Oh, do they?
of that particular gun. And that gun's quite interesting because it's a gun that most people wouldn't use, because probably during the casting there was a flaw and the muzzle is broken and it jagged and eroded, it looks like. And so it's not a complete muzzle for a gun. So you might have had a lower impact thing.
So what you're saying is that the dart fits in the barrel of that gun. Even though the gun is broken, I kind of struggle to think that you could shoot that dart out of a cannon, but it is in the ship and it is right next to a cannon. It's not in the tops outside the ship hull, where you'd expect a dart that you throw would be. But I think from looking at Weapons of Warre, there was several dozen darts or score of darts. There were loads of them. We can't be talking about these fire darts.
No, we can't be. They're too big.
So whatever they weren't that. There were 3 fire darts found on the Mary Rose? And how many in the inventory?
Well, if they're not the darts for the tops...
I don't think they are.
I don't think they are. There aren't on the inventory.
There weren't loads.
Well, I was trying to work out what space you'd need to store them, and goodness knows where you'd store them. I mean, the storage area for staff weapons, actually, you've got a gun here, a big culverin, bronze culverin here, and that area between there and where you've got those sort of punched holes, those are for swivel guns in the structure there and there. That area is a store area for battle-ready store area for things like all the archery equipment. So they were...
It's not that big an area.
No, they're chests of bows, chests of arrows. Those 2 chests had turned upside down, so there was a real mess across the deck. That's where we first found the longbows.
So I find that really annoying because it's not found in the obvious place. And
well, we wouldn't have found it if it had been in a fighting top. Let's put it that way.
Oh, so maybe the fighting tops were absolutely rammed with them.
Yeah, well, except the one fighting top we had, actually the only one, was found in store on the orlop deck below, actually in the bow.
Wasn't it?
So that is a complete deck. We're just missing a few deck planks. But if we look to our left towards the bow, in the upper deck here, this is the level of the upper deck, there you'd come out of the stern castle structure onto an open deck with netting above, and the anti-boarding netting would have been probably at the height of that screen there. And you can see hatch covers, 2 hatch covers there.
I see 'em.
So they're over 4 gun stations on the main deck. So those covers come up, and then you've got a geometrical wooden combing with the holes between them being about that big on the square.
Yeah, so a wooden grid work above.
A wooden grid work, which the dart couldn't go entirely through it, but it could stick in it quite. The spike could stick in that.
You've got a doorway, 2 doorways here through into this deck. Put a fire in front of those doorways. You're starting to disrupt the activity of the ship.
Yep, you're denying access and you're blocking areas.
And disrupting and messing up and going, oh, I can't go that way, I've got to go up, and then I've got to go down, and then I've got to go there. And then, you know, suddenly you're making a bit of a mess of operations.
Too. Yeah. Yes, you are.
It is different, a fire to a shot, because a shot will do damage, but it's done, and then we can all move on.
And then you patch it.
But the fire is there asking to be looked at, asking to be dealt with, asking to be put out, moved, shifted, observed. My understanding as well is a lot of sailors and certainly soldiers at the time couldn't swim. Being on a ship is scary enough, but being on a ship on fire immediately is going to change your perception of life, isn't it?
Well, I mean, people fought with fire ships for, ships that were designed to be alight and go into the rest of the fleet, to the enemy's fleet. So fire has long been a fear.
But the more I look at this thing, the more I learn about it. So 40-something years after starting the project?
Oh,
still
absolutely.
Learning?
Yeah. And that's what experimental archaeology is all about, isn't it? Because it's testing all the different theories you've got, and I mean, maybe you'll never even get the right one, but A, it's fun trying, and B, you can sort of exclude certain things.
But brilliant. Alex,
bye.
Thank you so
Till
much
the
for being
next
part of
time.
It was absolutely fascinating to learn more about the darts, but also the environment, where they're going to be stored, where they were going to be used. So it's now given me enough information to go and make the darts, but also how to construct some decent tests that show how they may have been used and what they might have done. So not only that's not enough. Graciously, Dr Alex Hildred has agreed to come up to Oxfordshire, and she's going to be with us when we run the tests. So we're going to be there watching these things work, and that is going to be thrilling for me as well. So join us for the next film, where we really get to see what these fire darts can do. See ya.